If someone asked, what makes you, you, how would you respond? For most of us, it's that constellation of experiences, memories, hard-won abilities, perhaps a job title. These are the kinds of dots that we connect when we tell the story of our lives. And I think this is part of why dementia scares us so much. If we couldn't connect the dots in the same way, who would we be? Would you still exist? Would we still love the people we love? And would they love us? Would life be worth living? Dementia challenges us with these kinds of big questions. What is dementia? Dementia is not actually a disease. It's a term that refers to a group of symptoms. It's kind of like saying, I have a sore throat. A sore throat is a symptom. It could be caused by strep or flu or some other illness. The most common cause for the group of symptoms that we call dementia is Alzheimer's disease. But there are many other brain diseases and injuries that can also cause it, and you see some listed here. In general, the symptoms grow more severe over time. However, that's different for each person, and people can live 5, 10, 20 years with dementia. Okay, that's the definition. Now let's talk about the emotion. Dementia scares us. Studies show that we are more afraid of dementia than we are of cancer or heart disease. Dementia scares me too. Earlier in my career, I hadn't planned to work with people living with dementia. I'd always wanted to work with older adults. I was a history major as an undergraduate before I became a social worker, and I'd always loved the way stories about the past gave me a sense of perspective. I felt it was imperative to know our pasts, both our personal memories and our shared histories. I'm also a bit of a nerd, and I always like to know lots of things and analyze them and have opinions about them. And I'm also a little bit type A, so I like to have a plan and for things to go according to plan. But another thing about me is that topics where there's silence and stigma intrigue me and make me want to dive in. And that's because I've always found that when we break those silences, we reduce isolation and give us all more freedom. So when I learned about this guy, I was intrigued. This is Beer Meesen. He's a Dutch psychologist. And in 1997, he started the world's first Alzheimer's cafe in Leiden, Holland. I want you to notice the sign behind him. Most of us avoid talking about dementia at all, and he's got Alzheimer's cafe in neon lights. When I learned about the cafe concept, and I learned about the dementia-friendly community movement, and I began to hear directly from people living with dementia about their experience, I thought, I want to do this. And in 2014, I started the second memory cafe in Massachusetts at Jewish Family and Children's Service in Waltham. This is the reason that memory cafes exist, because that fear that we talked about a moment ago creates stigma, and that isolates people. I've heard this exact statement from several people who are living with dementia, and also from the people who are closest to them. But at a memory cafe, we don't let fear isolate us. Memory cafes are welcoming social gatherings for people who are living with dementia, along with their family members and friends and professional caregivers if they have one. They're held in all kinds of places: museums, libraries, restaurants, houses of worship, even an outdoor garden and a bowling alley. Memory cafes are free of charge. People come as they are. That means they bring their symptoms. This can include forgetfulness, but also disorientation. So a person may experience themselves to be in a different place or at a different point in their lives. sometimes loss of inhibition, so they might say or do things that they wouldn't have before dementia, sometimes difficulty making decisions, or difficulty understanding language or speaking. In addition to their symptoms, people bring their joy, their personality, and their need for being with others. One time, a couple came to my memory cafe for the first time, and one of the pair came up to me and asked, "Do we belong here?" And I felt he was putting into words the emotion that I've seen on the face of each person the first time they come to the cafe. "Yes," I said, "you belong." Later, I learned that his wife has Alzheimer's disease. But at a memory cafe, no one asks you if you have a diagnosis or what that diagnosis is. You just belong. Everything at a memory cafe is about that feeling of belonging. Sometimes we can't tell who has dementia and who is a family member or a friend, and we like it that way. We wear name tags so no one needs to worry about remembering names. And every aspect of the cafe, the music, the food, the decoration, is chosen to create that sense of home. And for that reason, every single memory cafe is different. For example, Aroma de Café in Lawrence is held in Spanish. And because most of the guests have their roots in the Caribbean, the room is decorated with photos of coffee and cacao plants, and they serve cassava crackers with guava paste and cheese, which is absolutely delicious if you've never had it. And even the name of the cafe, Aroma de Café, which means the scent of coffee, was chosen to evoke that sense of home. I decorate the JF&CS Memory Cafe with artwork that our guests have made. It's not about being fancy, it's about being homey. It's about belonging. Most cafes involve the creative arts, and that's because with the arts, there are no wrong answers, and they also give us a language to communicate in if speaking and writing has become difficult. The arts connect us at the level of emotion, of being human together. People living with dementia continue to have an emotional life, and they need social connection. Social contact is one of our essential nutrients as human beings. Speaking of being human, I want to take our conversation back to that big existential fear that we started with, because I've noticed a change in myself since I started running a memory cafe. I'm less afraid of dementia now that I get to hang out at the memory cafe every month. But not only that, the JF&CS Memory Cafe has taught me to think bigger and looser. I'm better at improvising. Several years ago, I had the plan all ready for a particular memory cafe gathering, and then the guest artists were late to show up, and I broke out in a cold sweat. I thought, what if they don't get here? I have all this empty time to fill. Am I going to have to be entertaining? Can I possibly pull that off? I wondered if people would think I was unprofessional or they'd think I was boring. Would they leave and never come back? Would no one ever come to my party again? And then they arrived, and the irony hit me like a ton of bricks because the guest artists were improv actors. And so they just got started right away, and in 5 minutes, everybody was laughing. And what I realized was that it didn't matter that we started late. It didn't matter that things didn't go according to plan. All that mattered was being together in a welcoming place. And that lesson has stayed with me. A lot of wonderful unplanned things happen at memory cafes. Sometimes we have conga lines, or we have singing or reciting poetry, or just fun moments. The moments really count. A lot of the people who come to a memory cafe are not going to remember that they were there, even later that same day. But the good feelings that were generated during their time there will stay with them and carry forward into the next part of their day, and so on. The moments count. After all, nothing in life is permanent. When you really think about it, what is more valuable than our moments? I do want to give you some sobering statistics to give you a sense of the scope of this issue. More than 1 out of every 9 individuals 65 and older has a diagnosable dementia. Many, many people younger than 65 live with dementia. As a woman, I have a 20% chance of developing dementia at some point in my lifetime. So we're talking about a lot of people who are affected. When I started the JF&CS Memory Cafe, our guests wanted more. They wanted more locations and more meeting times. So I decided to start a network to help other organizations launch their own memory cafe. I called it the Percolator. It was an experiment, an improvised idea. And what's happened over the years is that the Percolator has become a community for people who are working to provide places where those affected by dementia can have a sense of community. We now have participants in over 24 states and several countries. In Massachusetts, there are now 115 memory cafes in 4 languages, and more are starting all the time. Globally, there are thousands of cafes. Each and every person who starts a cafe has one thing in common. They had to be able to envision dementia and joy in the same room in order to create a room where that was possible. I would invite you to come visit a memory cafe. You're very welcome to do that, and I promise you, you will have fun. There's just one rule. You can't sit in the back and watch. You have to participate. Don't be afraid. I should say, don't let fear stop you from enjoying the connection and fun at a memory cafe. I wish I could say, don't be afraid of dementia, but that would be naive. I never want to sugarcoat the impact that dementia has. It regularly ends jobs and careers and depletes family finances. It can turn family relationships upside down and burn out caregivers. Ultimately, the complications can be fatal. And when you roll it up to a national level, we're looking at a huge impact on healthcare budgets and a shortage of direct care providers that's growing all the time. I'm sure if any of us had a magic wand, we would wave it and make dementia disappear. Unfortunately, we don't have that wand. Researchers are dedicated to finding a cure or at least a way to slow disease progression, but so far they haven't been able to. Many people receive a diagnosis of dementia, and they're told, unfortunately, there's not much that can be done. And this is where I disagree. I think there's a lot that we can do as communities, because people with dementia can enjoy life. They can continue to have meaningful relationships. They are still unique people who make a difference to those around them. But there's a hitch. People can only live well with dementia if the communities that surround them believe that that's possible and set it as an aspiration. If we do that, then we will make the accommodations. We will create the welcoming environments. We'll do a better job of supporting the care partners. We will listen to the growing number of individuals living with dementia who have become advocates and leaders and are telling us what they want and need and what they continue to have to give to others. Can we let them teach us to think more broadly about who we are and what makes life worth living? This isn't only good for individuals living with dementia and their immediate family. It's good for all of us. Because imagine if you could learn that you are still a precious and valuable being, even if you didn't have all those dots, or even if you couldn't connect them in the same ways. I think that would be great news. For all of us, it can help to calm some of our fears about aging and give us a more flexible understanding of our value and humanity. It's doing that for me. I want to end with some words of wisdom from people living with dementia. Think of us as an individual, not just a care recipient. That's Christine Bryden. I still have so much to give and want to continue to use the skills that I have. That's Lupita Gutierrez Parker. And from Tim Brennan, we may have forgotten your name, but we remember love. Let's listen to these voices. Thank you.